Hey guys, welcome back to Reactive Attachments, the podcast, and welcome to my second attempt at part 2. I did post it yesterday, so you might have seen it or even heard it on YouTube at one point. However, when I guess I was converting the file to make it into a video for YouTube, something got corrupt. Somehow it got corrupted in the middle. So I took it down because chunks of it were like missing, and I didn't realize that at first, so I apologize. Which it actually works out for the better because I've done some more research. I was so inflamed by some of the things I read that have really sparked this controversy. The reason that this is like out of control, a lot of it has to do with an article and the verbiage used and the lack of clarity on who the people speaking are. So you may be familiar with that initial BuzzFeed article, and you may be familiar with the word rehoming. So I'm going to kind of seek to clarify the verbiage and what they're insinuating versus what they actually did, slash what's going on. And I'm going to get straight into it. So if you haven't listened to part 1 or you don't know who Myka Stauffer is, this may not be relevant to you. I'm going to link part 1, which is probably still not enough information to really cover the whole story and what's going on or why I'm talking about it, but it'll at least, give some overview. If you don't really follow this story, you probably could just skip this episode. So, all right, let's talk about the verbiage. So we're going to talk about rehoming. What does rehoming mean? Now, let me pull this article back up here. So when we talk about rehoming, a lot of people associate that with pets, which makes sense. And I would understand that from someone's perspective that's been in the game, that's been in this world for a long time. Rehoming isn't a word that we really use, even in this context. It isn't rehoming, it's mostly second chance adoption is what we're talking about here. So, let me find it here. All right, so this is from adoption.com. What is rehoming? I'm going to read this definition or their interpretation or whatever, the most commonly referenced definition for the word. Okay, rehoming is a term often used in situations where adoptive parents are trying to get rid of, quote unquote, their adoptive child, and this can stem from behavioral and or emotional issues from the adoptive child that the parents do not feel equipped to handle. So, most rehoming exchanges initially are made via the internet through websites or forums, and the majority of these rehoming exchanges are made by parents who adopted a child internationally, as there is less follow-up on resources for these parents. So many of the parents have stated that they had nowhere to go or no one to reach out to for help regarding these issues that they were having with their adopted child. So I'm going to go back to the article from BuzzFeed, and I'm going to quote a couple things here. And then I'm going to get into the people that we're talking about. So, based on the family's statements to the media so far and on their YouTube channel, it is unclear whether the Stauffer family found a new home for Huxley through an above-board, properly vetted process known as adoption dissolution or an underground, maligned practice known as rehoming. This is the kind of shit that set everybody on fire. Okay, so just follow along. I'm trying not to read as much as I did in the first round of this, but one place, this is the state spokesperson for the Franklin County Children's Services Department, and they did speak to BuzzFeed. What they said is, one place we do know Huxley is with the state government of Ohio. That's where the family lives. She said that Huxley is not in their custody. The adoption for the Stauffer family was an international adoption, which does not involve our agency. It appears that Myka has made arrangements with an individual person versus an agency. Okay, so what do we know? We know that rehoming is a term that's associated with a maligned, shady process. In this same article, it goes on to say that Turner added the agency is obligated to investigate any reports of abuse or neglect if one should arise, but any involvement would be confidential. That's true. And she's saying basically that that's the only time they would really get involved, right? So in the U.S., there are two very different ways a child that has been adopted internationally can be placed with a new family. The first is known as rehoming. It's not known as that, by the way. People don't really use that verbiage, just so you know. they're saying in this article, it's an unregulated custody transfer. And this is being quoted from a gentleman named Chuck Johnson. Now, Chuck Johnson is the President and CEO of the National Council for Adoption. Okay, National Council for Adoption. And he's the one that told BuzzFeed that it is incredibly frowned upon by the adoption advocates community. It's not illegal, but it should be, he says. There are some states that prohibit it, whatever. So this is his opinion, and this is what he's saying. So Johnson says, according to him, okay, it bypasses all the legal requirements that the court and the child welfare system have placed for this process. And when they do put this child in a permanent placement with another family, they do so without regard to their safety. He said, let's see, they're working on changing the laws. That doesn't matter. We don't want to see the rehoming issue. We want to see it prohibited, he says. We want to see it punishable by law, he says. Okay? So it's kind of still, if you're reading this article, you're like, oh man, this is crazy. This is like, it's so bad they're trying to change the laws. They want it to be illegal. Let's see. They say this practice poses serious safety concerns for adopted children, as well as legal ramifications for adoptive parents. Let's see. Now, they also say this. There's an overboard way for parents to place an adoptive child with a new family. It's in a process known as adoption dissolution. According to the National Council for Adoption, that's where this man works, this occurs when parents that have finalized an adoption relinquish their parental rights to that child. The child is then either adopted a second time by another family, or it's placed in the state foster care system. Okay, so this is what we're talking about. Rehoming, which they're saying is a bad process. It's maligned. It is shady. It's a practice where, these families are not held accountable for safety. That's what they're saying, right? Okay. So now this man comes in from the National Council for Adoption, and he says that the better way to do so is to relinquish your parental rights to the state, and then the child is either adopted a second time, it's not guaranteed, adopted a second time by another family that they choose, or it's placed in the state's foster care system. Hopefully you're following. So these cases where the child is adopted by a new family can be facilitated by the adoption agency independent of the state. Okay, so keep this in mind too. Adoption agency independent of the state. So privately through the agency though, not through yourself and an attorney. Okay. And an adoption agency independent of the state or federal government, but the agencies are required to report such transfers to the government. Properly licensed child placement agencies, they have the same authority that the state agency would have in terms of the legal ability to take responsibility for the child and make future placement decisions, says Johnson. He then adds that eventually the new family will need to go through the court system to adopt that child legally. Okay? These adoption dissolutions or disruptions, disruptions are basically, they adopt the process of adoption, they never finalize, so it happens before finalization. They're rare, this man says. They do happen every year, and according to the State Department, in the fiscal year 2019, only 8 adoptions were disrupted out of the 2,791 international adoptions for the year. The children ranged anywhere from age 2 to 13. Some remained in their home country and were returned to orphanages, and others were placed with new families. In fiscal year 2018, the adoption of 4 children, ages 5 and under, were disrupted. The reasons range from medical and behavioral issues to the parents just changing their mind. Okay? So now, on that same token, right, we have another spokesperson that's being quoted by this article. In 2019, the WACAP merged with, remember this name, Holt International, which is one of the oldest, well-established international adoption agencies in the U.S. Susan Cox, the vice president for policy and external affairs for Holt International, told BuzzFeed, the agency can't comment or confirm whether they were involved in the Stauffer's initial adoption of Huxley. She said, in a general sense, the way that the Stauffers went about this was unusual. putting it on social media and describing it as we found another family. Well, what does that mean? Did they go through an agency? Was there another home study done on that family? I mean, that part is really unusual, she says. Okay. She says that unfortunately not every adoption works out. It's not a good fit. Parents who believe they can no longer take care of their child need to work closely with their agency to access resources for help. She said there are times that relinquishment and reassignment does happen. It's tragic for everyone. And she then goes on to say, and let me say this, BuzzFeed is touting their legitimacy. She herself is an international adoptee from South Korea. She's the preeminent voice in international adoption and child welfare issues. She echoes Johnson, who's another expert, right? His sentiments against quote-unquote rehoming a child with no oversight. It's unethical. It's improper. Rehoming is the practice of just taking a child from one family to another, and there's absolutely no process. There's nothing that makes that okay. There's nothing in there that protects the child. Whole International goes through a series of counseling and evaluations once they learn a family wants to find a new home for their child. If a family relinquishes their parental rights to the child they adopted, we would work to find a family for that child. That's what she says. Yeah, this gets me so pissed. Now, what we do know is that the statements from the attorneys on the Stauffer quote unquote rehoming situation, this is what they've said. In the statement, the couple's lawyers say that a team of medical professionals who have advised our clients that it would be best for Huxley to be placed with another family. They did not offer any further details, and they also said the couple consulted with multiple professionals in the healthcare and educational arenas in order to provide Huxley with the best possible treatment and care. The lawyers stated that the Stauffers, who had hand-selected a family that are more equipped to handle Huxley's needs. He is thriving, he's very happy, he's doing well, and his new mommy has medical professional training and is a very good fit. We saw that in family time with other people. He constantly chose them and signed and showed tons of emotion to show us that that's what he wanted. All right, so let me move on really quick to some information that I think it's very important. Just to wrap up, rehoming, they are saying it's the process of taking an adopted child that you can no longer take care of, and you kind of place it with a family that hasn't been vetted and won't be vetted, okay? That there's no legal process. That is not true. In order to take a child from the care of one person to another, I'm not saying that there aren't child trafficking things that happen where, like, a child is, placed into, like, a sex trafficking or a child trafficking network by a family that has those kind of motivations. That's a separate issue. That's not what's happening here, and it's really shitty that it's being compared to that. So rehoming is, the absence of using the state system to follow this protocol, or using a fucking private adoption agency. But it makes it sound like there's no attorneys involved, that there aren't medical evaluations and professionals and home studies and all these things done. It makes it sound like nothing happens. You just dump a kid off at, like, some backyard Billy's house and, like, keep it pushing. That is not the case. I want to reference our good friend Chuck. Okay? Now, just out of curiosity, I wanted to look into this and see what was going on, and I did that today. I knew for a fact, both of these people that the BuzzFeed article are claiming to be, like, the experts, right? That they have motivations. And I said that in my first video, but I didn't explain exactly what that would look like. This whole adoption agency industry bullshit is a thing. There is thousands, hundreds and thousands, millions of dollars every year, and probably billions of dollars, especially when you include international, that is trafficked back and forth through hands. I mean, these things are highly money motivated. So when Susan Cox from Holt International says that it's so strange to her that they would announce this on social media, and that she, did you go through an agency? Now, she's through a private agency. Of course, that's going to be her question. It isn't strange. These types of families are all over YouTube, and very, very prominent influencer families doing very high numbers on their adoption journey videos that are getting paid lots of money. Those people are featuring their adoption agency in these videos. They're getting paid out. Like, this is a whole press game. It's a sponsorship game. It's a whole thing, right? Now, Holt International. Let's start there. Okay. So now these are old numbers, but I didn't want to keep going because it was enough for me. Whoa. All right, so Holt International, let's talk about this. Now, this starts in 2009. Holt International CEO made more than $164,000 a year for his salary. The senior VP in 2009 made $162,000 plus for his salary. So that's two CEOs that are making tons of money. The whole international VP of advancement, $149,000 salary. Whole international, what's the next one? COO, $107,000 in 2009. Now that's, 11 years ago? So just imagine. Now, Whole International paid New Song Ministries, Inc., a Christian sheet music and recording company, a staggering $1,191,307 in 2009. Interesting. Isn't that interesting? That's a lot of money. A lot of money. So there's and they have actually joined forces with a whole nother agency, and their hands are in a lot of pots. So that's who Susan Cox comes from. Now, she's the VP of whatever permanency or something, and it's 2020. So can you only imagine what her salary is? Now, let's look at our friend Chuck. Okay, Chuck, he was the training director and acting CEO in 2010 for the National Council for Adoption. Okay, he made $115,000 that year. Again, these are old numbers. So let me look up the national. Is there a second number here? No, okay, this specific sheet I think only has the National Council for Adoption acting CEO, which was the number I just read you guys. So there is a lot of money to be made in this game. I promise you. Let's see. I'm trying to see if there's on this other page, if there's more lists for the total. Oh, here we go. This is something else. This is an article. I was looking for another table. Okay, but this is an article that comes from people doing the research to find out what these salaries are. It's public information. I'll link it in the description. So keep in mind that these are numbers that are over 10 years old. When you're looking at salaries in this wonderful age, can't you imagine that they're much higher? I can. I feel like it's probably, it's probably astronomical. So, okay. Now, these are the same people saying that the process that they've gone through to quote-unquote rehome Huxley is so shady, it's so scandalous, it's so negative. And the whole wide internet has shut down the Stauffers. They have made the Stauffers into these absolute monsters. These monsters that have just given Huxley away, that, they're despicable, that there was no oversight, that nobody confirmed the criminal backgrounds of this new family and who are they, and they want transparency. Have you seen what they've done? All of these people, all of these fans, all of these followers, have you seen what they've done with the information? They have hacked people that have, and I know one of them myself, for 5 hours, my friend was hacked. And inside of her own social media accounts was receiving the worst kind of comments and messages and accusations by a hacker that's not in this country for simply leaving a compassionate message on a Myka Stauffer post. I think it was on Instagram or something. For 5 hours. They had all of her children's information, all of her information, where she worked. They knew everything about her life. They taunted her. They called her the worst names you've heard. Like, all of this stuff are leaving. She deleted the message and finally got it shut down. But, that's crazy. So, it's none of your fucking business where Huxley is and who the family is. Now, because of all of this, all of the multitudes of police reports to the county, They are investigating not only Huxley, who the, I guess, Delaware County or Franklin County Police Department has said that they did, in fact, go through the proper channels and that Huxley is fine, but they're investigating Huxley as well as the other children. So the internet thinks that they should have access to where Huxley is and the family that he's been adopted by on some fucking strange, unrealistic quest for information about Huxley. They have literally destroyed this family. Okay. So with that being said, rehoming is in fact what we call in our world, the world that I've been in for 15 years, second chance adoption. Now, I don't love the Stauffers. I don't think they're the most responsible, wonderful, amazing people. I don't. But what I want to address is that, one, they're very wealthy. They have access to incredible resources financially. They have, and I believe, 100% I believe, that they have paid for evaluations and assessments from medical professionals. I believe 100% that they have done a lot of things that are not listed in the state requirements, okay? Because when you have a family like this, they've decided this isn't working out. What do they need more than validation from the experts? In order to move on this, they would need, I believe, as humans, validation from experts in written form, multiple units of this. They would want that because whether you guys like how accountable they've been or not, in their town, there are going to be people coming for them as well as the whole entire globe of people that have followed them. They're going to eventually want, and they might have eventually shown, proof of these evaluations and recommendations. That is how they're going to release their guilt, is by having multiple people tell them that this isn't the best fit for Huxley. He needs to be in a different place. Okay? This is a very wealthy family. It's not a family that's been depending on a foster care check through the state. They have lots of money, and frankly, they can afford to do so. Okay? I also don't think this claim, I'm not even going to address it. I'm just going to say it. The claim that she only adopted Huxley to get rich and famous on YouTube, I mean, it's stupid. I don't know her intentions. They probably were not the intentions I believe are correct for adoption. She's also 28, I think, at the time, which is crazy. And she had 4 biological children already. Or 4 biological children already. What in the actual hell? So, let me just back up again. So, rehoming, this shady protocol, or lacking in protocol and oversight, criminal empire, funding of, funneling of children. Please understand that this is a mother of 4 biological children, okay? Whether she is arrogant, conceited, and contrived, whether she's using a persona to exploit all of her children or her motherhood or whatever on YouTube and make money off of a vlog, I don't care about that. It's all probably very true, right? But I don't think that you can expect, because you don't like the way things have gone, you don't like the lack of transparency that you feel you deserve as a random human being in anywhere USA, that you can say that she would have bad intentions. Now, according to Chuck and according to Suzanne, what they're telling to BuzzFeed is the better way to go about this is to relinquish, okay? So, voluntarily terminate your own parental rights for this adopted child and hand this child over to the system. That's not, okay, that's not how that works. It's not how that works. They paid in their own private process. They've paid for attorneys. They have their own attorneys and the other family has attorneys. She has already said that the family has medical training, which makes perfect sense to me. The family that is probably, not only do they have a higher level of training, education, and a level of experience with Huxley type children with those disabilities, whatever, they're probably well connected, and that's probably how they found this family. In the process of getting these evaluations and assessments and recommendations done, someone in that system of protocol probably said, this is the best we think that this is a good fit. You should meet this family. And then Huxley probably did have a better experience there. I 100% believe it was the right choice. But there are attorneys that do have to file these things. The adoption, when you adopt a child, the birth certificate changes. You become the legal parent on the birth certificate. In order to place him with another family, you can't just drop him off with someone that seems interested from the internet, as they would have you believe. It's not like a car title. You can't just cross out one name and sign another one on there. The new family needs proof of medical records, guardianship, or actual parental investment, which would be like the adoption process, which is a legal process. You can't just transfer your adopted child and your rights as their parent over outside of the court system. It doesn't work that way. The government needs to be aware of it. Well, the judiciary system will be aware of it. The family law system will be aware of it when they transfer, when they're not transferring, but when they're legally, voluntarily ending their own rights, and there's another family that's adopting the child. It's nobody's business. Okay? So that's what they're calling rehoming. It's a second parent or second chance adoption. What I want to highlight about this is that there's not usually a lot of financial benefit from this, okay? What I mean by that is when a person is going through this process, they are going to go through and, they're going to make the change of guardianship, or whatever words you want to use, when the second family steps in to take over, okay? There isn't going to be a whole lot of elements to this process that you don't have an awareness of. Or financial control in. So when you're looking at their criminal records and these things, like your attorneys are doing that. That's usually the attorneys that do that. And they do have to have some legal representation, because understand that these are, in fact, adoption situations or guardianship. So even if the new family isn't adopting them, they are having to get legal guardianship of these children. So if there is a financial gain to it, it's usually resources like food stamps or Medicaid or something along those lines. So the adoption agencies, however, they can say, oh, this has been really traumatic, which, yes, I'm not saying it hasn't. We need X amount of therapeutic intervention. We need to have these therapies, these evaluations, these home studies. We need to do this, this, and that. And they charge, using their people, whatever they want to charge. And there's usually another fee. Okay, this is all, you can look it all up. It's all real. There is a large industry of financial, monetary gain that happens in this world. It is huge. So they definitely want you to show up, okay? They want you to show up at the agency and tell them how, battered and beaten and torn and broken you are. And they want your help, and they want you to get involved, because an agency has all these resources, and they do have resources. But this is a system, okay? You understand, this is a system that pays people 6 figures salaries. It's supposed to be all of these nonprofit organizations. That's not true. These are mostly profiteering. There's a lot of profiteering happening here. And on the state side, this man that doesn't work for a state agency, Chuck Johnson, he says, and he's telling the BuzzFeed journalist, that the best way to do this is to eliminate your own parental rights to this child using the state services system that is already inundated and overwhelmed. Okay? Once you do that, you don't know where the hell this child goes. So does it go into foster care? Is it in the town's well-known household of abuse and sexual abuse and whatever else? You don't know. You don't get any information. It's out of your hands. You just drop the kid off at with the state and you leave. Okay? So Mr. Johnson is saying that the best way to go about this is to go through a private agency. Private agencies are for profit. Okay? Relinquish your rights with the state as another option. When you turn over an adopted child to the state, do you know what happens? there are consequences, legal consequences that are very, very great, very, very large set of options of what they could be, variables, if you will. 95% of the time in my last 15 years of experience, when you try to relinquish your rights and you try to dissolve an adoption, it's considered abandonment through the state. And what the state does is they take your kids too. So if you have biological kids in the house, you fall under investigation. You will be going to court. All the kids are placed in foster care for X amount of time. They make you pay. I've seen this go on for up to a year. Now, there's no history of abuse. There was letters and statements written by multiple people that had worked with this family. The one I'm thinking of most recently, teachers, etc. There was nothing about their biological children, or even with the adopted child. There was nothing to ever indicate abuse, neglect, harm of any kind. These children, 3 children, sat in foster care for a year. These people went to court, I think, every other week. Okay, they lost so much. The mom, the wife, the mom, lost her job. And she was the main breadwinner, an executive level job. Her reputation was ruined, just like they're doing in this situation. Yet, the child that was disrupted sat in foster care, not with its siblings, the biological children, not in a place, like literally fell off the face of the map. The guardian ad litem and then the state representatives, all these people show up in court, so they won't tell her where the child is. She has no idea where the child is, or where she knows where her own children are. There are really large factors here that they didn't mention in this BuzzFeed article, and that people don't know what the fuck they're talking about. You don't just get to participate in the state foster care system as a voluntary, for voluntary purposes in the dissolution of an adoption, or even like, hey, I've decided I want to adopt my child out. Like, I'm going to bring him to you guys and I want to sign off my parental rights. Boom. It's that easy. It isn't that easy. When the state is involved, and they talk about these home studies and background checks and whatever else, when the state gets involved in something, for every service they provide on one side, positive, oh, you want food stamps? Boom. Here you go. Most states are then, they're going after the parents for child support. That makes sense. The biological parents for child support. If you disrupt an adoption, there are times where you have to pay into the state for whatever services the child receives until they're in a permanent home. Well, guess what? If they're getting money from you, what do you think is happening? They're dragging it out. And like, these are things that people don't discuss, but these are real things. These happen every day. I'm telling you, they happen every day. So they call it rehoming because it's a private process, and it's not illegal in most states for good reason. Most people that have adopted children have adopted these children because they wanted them, because they wanted to be a parent of an adopted child. They were compelled or called by religious or spiritual reasons. They wanted to have a baby so badly, so they do an international adoption, whatever it may be. But these are people that are typically in the system of adopting because they want a compassionate, driving desire to adopt a child. Most people don't take on the burden of raising someone else's child that is not biologically connected to them just for fun. I know I've done it. I did it for my entire adult life and even before. I was 17 years old when I started being involved in my goddaughter's care. And I am still involved in her care, and whether that's raising her full time, her living with me, which she has for lots of years of her life, or like right now, where she's in a different state with her biological father, but my wife and I are still heavily involved in her life. You are connected to this child. You do want what's best for this child. And she lived with me up until she moved in with her dad once he had been sober for a long time and he was showing that he could do it. But she always wanted to live with her biological parent, of course. So we technically participated in a rehomed adoption type of situation. When the biological parents are on drugs and they can't take care of this child and the state isn't involved yet, or they've decided to close the case, or they're, not really compelled, whatever. That is a rehome situation. It is where the custody and the primary care is being given by a family or a person without local or governmental oversight or approval. So kinship adoption type situations or kinship care. So if it's a grandma and a grandson, if it is a step parent and the step parent's new spouse, that happens often. Like, oh, this person was with my dad. Well, they got a divorce. My dad fell off. My mom died. The next person that's most invested in my life would be this person. They step in. The state never steps in. Maybe dad signed over guardianship paperwork and they had it notarized and they went through the courts that way. These types of things happen in varied formats all the time. Women that have surrogate children for gay couples or lesbian couples or whatever, whether the contributing factors, the biological contributions were their eggs or sperm or whatever, it doesn't matter. I mean, as far as that woman goes, she can show up in a hospital, she can give birth to that child, she could even choose in some bizarre way to sign the fucking birth certificate and say she doesn't know who the dad is, and then she can choose to give her quote unquote her baby up for adoption to this person and this person's spouse. These kind of things happen every day. A homeless girl who's friends with, like somebody she's friends with from school, is pregnant. And they let her come stay in the house. They keep her sober. When she has the baby, she signs the baby over to them. Nobody comes in their house and checks it out. There are attorneys involved. There are legal protocols involved. But for the most part, the state doesn't have to be involved in the systems of the private goings on of families until they do. And I'm a big believer that, yes, you do have outliers. Yes, there are people that abuse children. Yes, there are people that abuse their own biological child that they brought into this world in their own home. There are all kinds of systems of abuse. And this isn't, look, if you really believe that Myka Stauffer adopted this child with bad intentions, she went all the way to China. She had these wonderful financial relationships with her YouTube audience. They donated. She has huge money coming in from the viewership. She has huge money coming in from brand deals and sponsorships. If you don't think that her following and her monetary success and the place she adopted Huxley from had conversations, I would strongly, strongly urge you to reconsider that idea. All she has to do is mention them, the name, which she has, of the agency, and trust me, they're going to thrive in a positive way from that name drop. Also, the people that are saying, oh, she's just monetizing and exploiting him, these are people that are also monetizing and exploiting her and him. Their story. They are getting 890,000 views. They're making season, 6 and 7, 8 episodes about this story with nothing but uneducated opinions from people that are not adoptees, adopters. They haven't been in the process of, they've never experienced an international adoption. They only have their biological children. Like, it's crazy. The whole thing is crazy. So let me just wrap it up by saying this. I want you to think really hard. All right, so we've redefined the word rehoming to be more clear, okay? In our circumstance, a very wealthy family with a child that has extremely difficult to manage disabilities, medical needs, communication needs, things like this. They have sought out professional evaluations. They have sought out medical assessments, and it has been determined that Huxley would be better off in a home that is more qualified. Okay, they paid for that. They didn't dump him on the state to go to foster care. They didn't dump him in the foster care system. What did they do? They paid for all the things. They're keeping his privacy intact, which I think is a huge necessary situation right now. Like, if you look at what's going on, why the fuck wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they keep his privacy? They may even be paying this family to stay under the radar, to take a really long vacation. You don't know. Because what would this family go through? Are they prepared to go through this internet? The devastation of their reputation on the internet? You think that these millions of people that are involved, and they now have monetary investment themselves, that they're getting hundreds of thousands of views, they're getting hundreds of thousands of clicks, and they can promote their other endeavors? You think that those people aren't going to turn this into a controversy? You're wrong. Everybody's monetizing off of it. It's part of the it's part of the process. So like all of these overly compassionate my adoption journey stories that all these other people are watching, their intentions are also a hot mess. So anyway, rehomed. They paid for lots of intervention that they privately discovered or sought out or implemented. They have attorneys on both sides. These attorneys have made statements. The whole family is now under investigation. The state has said, the police department has said that they did in fact go through the appropriate channels. The attorneys have given enough information that it should appease everyone. Now they have the Department of Children and Family Services are involved. They're receiving thousands and thousands of claims of neglect. Everything is still looking pretty good. No information has been released that they have neglected any of their biological children or hurt them in any way, or Huxley. The police, the sheriff's office has said the same thing, that they promised that they went through the appropriate channels. They have put their eyes on Huxley. He's fine. So we're not considering the privacy concerns. We're calling rehoming something that basically tells the world, Myka Stauffer, based on two experts, right? Both that profit from this decision, trying to make the process illegal, forcing people to go through the state that's already inundated, that's already overwhelmed. They say it is a shady practice and you need to go through the state or a private agency. So when you have money and you can afford to do the right thing, instead of dumping a child in another short-term home, in another foster home, in the state foster home, this whole shit show, they want you to believe that they have a better set of tools and skills and resources to make these decisions. Yet they're the ones that fucking chose to do the international adoption in the first place with Myka Stauffer. Do you think a 28-year-old that already has 3 biological children, that is 28 years old, that has been told by numerous professionals, medical professionals, psychologists, neurologists, that Huxley's disabilities were great, that he had brain damage, that they shouldn't maybe choose him as a child, they should look elsewhere, that he was going to need an undetermined amount of intervention. They still, and she ignored it. She said in a video that I think is taken down, she ignored this. She says, God softened our heart. We knew we could take on anything. We knew we already loved him. She admits that she was naive, that the 1.5 years of videos and pictures, that she assigned a personality to this child that wasn't who the child was. The child couldn't communicate. She had to teach the child from her English position with no Chinese, right? Which is the only language he had ever been around. She had to teach him how to communicate with sign language while raising 3 other children, okay? Or 4, I'm sorry, 4. I keep saying 3. It's 4. She had 4 biological children, I think. I need to clarify this. Hold on. I keep forgetting because she just had another baby. Let's see. I'm pretty sure let's see. Hold on a minute. Sorry, I should have already done this. I know, I'm the worst. Okay. As of the time this was written, which I don't know when this was, but it looks like they have 4 children. So that's Kova, Jacob, Bradley, and Onyx. And let's see. I'm pretty sure, is that all of her kids? Let me pause this, hold on. Okay, so basically, they have 4 biological children, and that includes the one that's not James's child, from what I think. I was thinking that they had 3 together already, and then her one from the other relationship, which would have made 4, plus him would be 5. And then she just had her technical 5th biological, but maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I don't feel like digging for it anymore. But I want to say this too. In relationship to this rehoming process, not only did they pay for their own professionals to have these things done and assessed, they're worth a lot of money. So obviously they have the financial resources to get the best of the best. I don't see them scraping the barrel for these people that are giving these opinions. they have placed a child in a family that has the education, the training, and the experience, the resources to deal with the types of medical needs that Huxley has. They did not choose to dump him into the foster care system at the local state Department of Children and Family Services office. They also are not, in my opinion, an ideal set of parents to do an international adoption. They were under the age of 30. They had multiple biological children in the home already. Okay? Like, I'm sorry, but at 28 years old, like, your experience, you have no experience. I know she was a nurse in a previous life, you know, for however long. It can't be that long because you have to go to college, and then, you know, like, she had been doing this family thing for quite a while, like as a stay-at-home mom, so I don't know. I feel like in my 15 years in this game, my 32, almost 33 years on the planet, I don't think that it is ideal for a wealthy influencer family from YouTube under the age of 30, never adopted a child locally, been in the adoption world, doesn't have any idea what it's like to raise a child that's not of your own biological contribution, to go to China one time, which is the only time, to pick up a child that has such severe handicaps, disabilities, and needs that they had been warned by every type of every professional that could warn them not to adopt him. They did it anyway, and this agency allowed them to do so. Okay? It allowed them to do so. And I'm sure they got a hefty chunk of change in the process. They are not the ones, I think, that should say that they're the experts. Put him back with a private agency that specializes in international adoption and let them use their resources, their protocols, their background checks, their levels of securing the right family. Let them decide. Nah. So the Stauffers paid for it. They had interventions from multiple types of professionals, and upon this recommendation, to a much better family that's better suited for Huxley. They did not rehome him. He was placed in a permanent family on a second chance adoption. That's the way to look at this. But everybody loves to sensationalize this and make it into some shit show that it doesn't have to be. This person, this family, they raised him for 2 years. They know him. They know the needs, the struggles. They can assess the home with the professionals and say, this would work better for Huxley. This wouldn't, etc. You want an overworked, underpaid social services person to go in and make these decisions about a strange child with lots of disabilities. You want them to be the ones. You don't think that the Stauffers are capable of using their own compassion, their own attachment to him, whatever that may be, small, none, experience with him, whatever it is, they have the 2 years of experience. They're the ones that know him, and in conjunction with professionals that they're paying a lot of money for and attorneys, they didn't place him in a foster care situation. They placed him with a permanent family. But the world thinks it would have been better to go through the state agency of Ohio? Like, are you joking? I pulled up a couple of resources just to look and see, like, some of the news headlines for the state, for Columbus, Ohio, which is where they are, and some of the foster care concerns. Let me just read some of these from the last couple years. Okay, so the governor wants to double the state aid for children's services across Ohio, as funding is severely limited. Ohio ranks last in the nation for support of local children's services. DeWine wants change now in overwhelming Ohio foster care system. Ohio has too many children in crisis. This is the end of last year, end of November 4th, 2019. With an improved foster care program. I'm not going to open this because I've already opened enough of I can't open any more without paying for it, so I don't want to pay for it. Ohio proposal would help families keep custody of their severely mentally ill and autistic children. Hundreds of Ohio's child welfare caseworkers threatened to go on strike for increased wages, and they did in fact do that. Ohio needs to help kids hurt by parents' heroin use. 50% of Ohio's children placed in foster care in the year of 2015 were victims of abuse and neglect because of parental drug use, according to blah, 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 and that was in 2017. Baby dies after being reunited with foster family. Let's see. but all bipartisan leaders that are pushing bills to aid the Ohio foster care kinship care burdens. This is May of last year. Public Children's Services Association of Ohio released a report detailing the crisis in this system. More than 26,700 children were in foster care at some point, and they could have, guess what, been in kinship care. Ohio's parents who returned adopted son turned themselves in. Now, let me read this to you guys. This is great. An Ohio prosecutor said Friday that he's going to pursue abandonment charges in this case and all similar cases to the latest, in which authorities say a couple gave their 9-year-old son to child welfare officials after raising him from infancy. Okay, so they disrupted their adoption or dissolved their adoption along the lines that they were specifically advised to do in that BuzzFeed article. Said that all similar cases that have been handled in the past within the children's services agencies and domestic courts, and while that's appropriate, he said, criminal charges are also to be considered. There has never been a focus on the criminality of merely abandoning a child, he said in an interview. That's going to stop immediately. There are legal consequences. This couple was indicted this week on charges of non-support of dependents, turned themselves in on Friday night. Sheriff Richard Jones said that Cleveland Cox, age 49, and wife Lisa were released on $10,000 bond, and they were due in court on November 27th. They wouldn't respond to this. Authorities say that the parents left the boy with Children's Services in October after saying he was displaying extremely aggressive behaviors. The sheriff's report in August said the adoptive mother said the boy had threatened the rest of the household with a knife. The couple has 2 biological children. And attorney Olivis was appointed by the courts to protect the child's interest and has said that the boy is hurt and confused, and he's now receiving help that the parents should have gotten for him. A national adoption advocacy leader said adoptive parents not only have strong parental rights, they have a binding legal obligation. This is our boy Chuck Johnson. I think that's something the great majority of adoptive parents do recognize. Chuck Johnson, an adoptive father and the president of the National Council for Adoption. That's what we want. Comprehensive national statistics are not available on failed adoptions, yet we have quoted numbers in that BuzzFeed article. Johnson said they're extremely rare in cases in which the child has been raised from infancy. He's always saying in these circumstances they're rare. He said the majority of an estimated 400,000 plus children in foster care across the United States had biological parents unwilling or unable to care for them. And occasionally that also happens with adoptive parents. Such bullshit. Such bullshit. These adoption advocates are concerned the prospects of criminal charges and negative publicity will hurt the efforts to find good parents for children in need. Yeah, you think? Everybody tries, but sometimes it doesn't work out. This person that made that comment is obviously, she figures it out. She knows what's up. There's a growing push, and this is all out of Ohio, out of Columbus, I'm pretty sure, among advocates for more post-adoptive services and support, especially for the parents that have been willing to take on special needs children, but yet you're going to fucking prosecute them. That's great. That's wonderful. Benjamin Johnson of the Department of Children and Family Services Job Department said that over 12,000 of the Ohio foster children, nearly 400 are in county or care or custody after being adopted. Many reasons other than abandonment can explain why a child is no longer with their adoptive family, he said, and those include sexual assault or even the parent's death. Johnson said that since the department isn't a law enforcement agency, it would be inappropriate to comment on the prosecuting of adoptive parents for abandonment. Look, this is a real thing. But we do urge parents struggling to raise children to seek public or private assistance or counseling as appropriate. Boom, there you go. There's your fucking answer. Oh, but y'all want her to go to the state. I see. It makes sense. Page 2. State adds more stops to foster forum tour. Ohio seeks more foster parents to help kids from drug-ravaged families. As DeWine, the governor, pleads for the child welfare officials in Ohio. $148 million more to help at-risk children last year. Deserted 5-year-old takes toddler to neighbor in the bitter cold. What else is going on here? Anything else that matters? Daycare workers, the Ohio child welfare system is in serious crisis. They're overwhelmed by the surge of children who have parents consumed by drug addiction. Ohio's system of protecting abused and neglected kids is facing facing a crisis that's at an all-time high. Okay. So you see what I'm saying? These people did the right fucking thing. Adoption doesn't always work out, okay? Period. It's very hard to raise other people's children when there's no genetic or biological contribution. I don't care what you say. I see it every day of my life. I've been providing support for these people for 15 years. It is real. Adoption is not this beautiful, magical story. There is adoption trauma for everyone involved. It is a difficult journey. Bonding and attaching are difficult if they even occur. There are wounds and PTSD that is involved. You guys, to the ones out there that have turned this into a public fucking hanging of this family. It is so unfair. I don't particularly like the family. They don't do it for me. I do feel like she has a contrived persona. I feel like the husband is milquetoast. You could just literally put him on a leash and he'll go anywhere and do anything she says. But it doesn't matter. To think that you guys all loved her so much in the beginning and you thought that her parental intuition was on point in the beginning, and now you're calling for her head in videos that you're making hella money on. I think it's a fucking joke. And I think all of you that co-sign it and that want to see her fucking rot are pieces of shit yourselves, because you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what you're talking about. She did exactly the right thing. Period. That's all I have to say about it. Like, subscribe, share, send me a fuck you, whatever it is. I don't care. Sorry this ended up being so long.